Jackson had always been drawn to the unknown, to places untouched by time, and to cultures that had long been forgotten. He wasn't just a human explorer. He was a seeker of mysteries, a collector of stories, and a challenger of boundaries. When he was assigned the mission to Zurath, an ancient world on the edge of known space, he expected a typical dig, artifacts, ruins, maybe some half-decent relics to bring back to Earth. But what he found there was far more than he could ever have imagined. The planet was harsh, a dry wasteland of jagged mountains and endless deserts. Zurath was known for its hostile environments, but Jackson had long grown accustomed to surviving in places like this. He had the tools, the equipment, and the training. What he didn't have was the knowledge of the ancient civilizations that once called this planet home. According to his briefing, there had been multiple lost cultures here, each one leaving behind remnants of their once great civilizations. Most of it was buried deep beneath the surface, hidden away in caves and ruins long forgotten. It was during one of his expeditions into the caves of the high desert that he stumbled across the hidden ritual site. Jackson had followed the readings on his scanner, which had shown a strange anomaly deep underground. The cave system was vast, its passages twisting like veins in the planet's dry skin. After hours of searching, he finally came upon it, a small cavern with walls covered in strange symbols and markings. In the center of the room, there was a pool, dark and shimmering, almost alive, pulsing with an energy that Jackson couldn't comprehend. His curiosity got the best of him. There was something about the pool, an allure that was hard to resist. As he approached, he noticed that the liquid inside wasn't water but something that looked like blood, yet it seemed too thick, too vibrant. It didn't seem like anything from this world. Without thinking, Jackson reached down and dipped his fingers into the liquid. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy coursed through his arm, up his spine, and into his chest. It was as if the entire cavern had suddenly come alive, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. The blood-like substance seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, matching his rhythm as if it was aware of him. He hesitated, pulling his hand back, his mind racing. But the pull was too strong. Jackson found himself leaning closer to the pool, drawn to it in a way that was beyond his understanding. His instincts screamed at him to leave, to turn back, but his curiosity, and something deeper, told him to drink, so he did. The taste was like nothing he'd ever experienced. It wasn't just metallic like human blood. It was ancient, powerful. The moment it touched his tongue, his body seemed to shudder with something more than just physical sensation. It felt as if the liquid was flowing through his veins, mingling with his own blood, and in that moment everything changed. His vision blurred for a second, and then it was as if the world had shifted. He saw flashes, images of alien landscapes, towering structures, and strange creatures. It was as if the blood carried with it the memories of a long-forgotten past. He saw battles being fought in the skies, ancient warriors clashing with enemies of unimaginable strength, and a royal family, a line of rulers that stretched back millennia. Jackson staggered back, his breath coming in short gasps. What was happening to him? His heart was racing, his body suddenly full of energy, his mind alive with visions that weren't his own. The blood had awakened something inside him, something ancient, something powerful. "Stop!" a voice cried out. Jackson's head snapped toward the entrance of the cavern. There, standing at the threshold, was an alien woman. Her skin was a deep shade of violet, and her eyes burned with a fierce intensity. She was tall, with an air of authority that couldn't be ignored. She wore a long, flowing robe adorned with intricate patterns, and around her neck hung a pendant that seemed to glow with the same energy as the pool. The woman's gaze was locked on him, her expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "That's my blood, human. Stop drinking." Jackson's hands were shaking, but the strange power inside him kept him rooted to the spot. He had never felt anything like this before, not the visions, not the power coursing through his body. It was as if the entire world had suddenly expanded beyond the limits of his comprehension. But even as she shouted, Jackson didn't stop drinking. The liquid continued to flow through him, filling him with a strength that was beyond human. The visions grew stronger, the images flashing before his eyes, each one more vivid and detailed than the last. He saw the alien woman, no, not just her. He saw her ancestors, the royal family she was part of, and their pact with humanity. The blood was not just a gift, it was a bond, and Jackson was now a part of it. The woman rushed forward, her eyes wide with desperation. "Stop!" she demanded again, but there was a hint of fear in her voice now. "You don't understand. You're tapping into something you can't control." But it was too late. The blood had already taken hold of him. Jackson felt a surge of power that made him feel invincible. The energy coursing through him was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. He could hear her voice, distant and echoing, but it was as if it was no longer the woman standing before him speaking. It was the blood itself, reaching out to him, guiding him. The woman's face twisted with confusion and fear as she took a step back, her hand reaching out as if trying to stop him. "No, you don't know what you're doing. You're—" But Jackson barely heard her anymore. The power within him was too strong. His vision grew sharper, his senses heightened. He felt as if he could see through the walls of the cavern, through the entire planet, as if the blood had connected him to something vast and ancient. The woman took another step back, her fear palpable. She knew what he had just done. She knew that the blood he had consumed was more than just a relic of her people. It was a key that had the power to change everything. Jackson's mind raced with questions, but all of them felt distant, meaningless compared to the force that was now pulsing through him. The woman seemed to be saying something, but he couldn't focus on her words anymore. All he could focus on was the feeling inside him, the power, the ancient connection, the knowledge that had just entered his body. As the woman stood there, her eyes narrowed in suspicion, Jackson felt something new, the pull of destiny. And though he couldn't yet fully understand it, he knew that his life would never be the same again. Jackson stood still, his body trembling with the power that surged through him. The woman, Jarla, he now realized, was still watching him with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Her words echoed in his mind, but they didn't quite register. All he could feel was the energy, the raw, untamed force that flowed from the blood he had consumed. He was no longer just human. That much was clear. Jarla took a step closer, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "You don't know what you've done. The blood you drank, it's ancient. It's tied to my family, to my people. You've awakened something inside you that you can't control." Jackson's eyes narrowed, and his heart raced, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that pumped through his veins. His senses were sharper now. He could hear Jarla's heartbeat, feel the slight shift of air as she moved. The world had become more vivid, more real. Everything had grown clearer, more precise. He could even hear the faintest whispers of something that seemed like ancient voices, or perhaps echoes of the past, speaking to him from far beyond. "What do you mean?" Jackson finally managed to speak, his voice steady despite the overwhelming sensations. He wasn't sure if he was speaking to Jarla or if he was speaking to the blood itself. "What is this power?" Jarla hesitated. She looked down at the ground, then back up at Jackson, her gaze softening, as if she were deciding whether or not to trust him. "That blood is the lifeblood of my ancestors. It's not just power, Jackson, it's a bond between my people and yours. It was forged in an ancient pact, one that has shaped both our worlds for centuries." Jackson's mind raced. He had thought he was here for an archaeological dig. He had expected to find relics, perhaps ancient tools or forgotten technologies, but this was far beyond anything he had ever anticipated. He had come looking for history, but now he was part of it. Jarla took another step forward, her eyes searching his, almost as if looking for something. "You are now linked to my bloodline, whether you want to be or not. The energy inside you, it's the essence of my people, and that power has always been dangerous." "Dangerous?" Jackson asked, his voice rising slightly. He felt something stir deep inside him, something he couldn't quite name. He wasn't sure if it was fear or excitement, but it was real, and it was growing stronger. "Why dangerous? What are you saying?" Jarla exhaled, her shoulders slumping slightly. "My people have used the blood for centuries to maintain our strength, our immortality. But it comes at a cost. We've had enemies, rivals who would do anything to take that power for themselves. And now, with the blood inside you, you have become a target. You've unlocked the door to something that has been sealed away for far too long." Jackson took a deep breath. He felt his body tense. "So what now? Am I supposed to just let it go?" Jarla's expression softened. "You can't just let it go. The bond is already made. You are a part of it now, Jackson, but you don't have to let it control you. You need to understand what it is, what it means. Only then can you choose your path." The weight of her words settled over him, but it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a calling. He could feel the ancient power inside him, pulsing in time with his heart. It was part of him now, and he had no idea how far it could take him. "I don't even know who I'm supposed to be now," Jackson muttered. "I came here for history, for artifacts, but this is something else entirely." Jarla's gaze softened even further. She stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out, though she didn't touch him. "It's not just something else, Jackson, it's everything. This power, this bond, it connects you to a legacy that stretches back millennia. You can't undo it, but you can control it. And you don't have to do it alone." Jackson felt the weight of her words, but he wasn't sure what to make of them. He wasn't sure how to control the power that was swirling inside him, threatening to consume him. The blood had filled him with more than just strength. It had filled him with visions, memories of things that weren't his own. Memories of wars, of rulers, of betrayals, and all of it was tied to Jarla's people. All of it had been passed down through her bloodline. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to center himself. The power within him was intoxicating, but it was also overwhelming. He needed answers. He needed to know what to do with all of this. "I don't understand," he finally said, his voice low. "I feel like I'm being pulled in so many directions at once. My mind is racing with things I don't know, things I can't control." "You have to understand," Jarla replied softly. "The blood chose you, you didn't just stumble upon it, it has recognized something in you. It's not just a physical power, it's a mental and spiritual connection. You are tied to my bloodline now, and that means you are part of everything we've been through." Jackson opened his eyes, looking at her. "But I'm not like you, I'm human." Jarla nodded, her expression unreadable. "You are human, yes, but the blood has always chosen those who could be both, those who could understand the power and yet remain grounded. You will have to decide if you can control it or if it will control you." Jackson's mind raced again. The more Jarla spoke, the more his senses seemed to sharpen. He could feel the shift of the air around them, hear the faintest sounds that shouldn't have been audible. The blood had connected him to something greater than himself. And yet he felt as though he was standing on the edge of a precipice. One wrong move, and he might fall into the abyss. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled. It wasn't just a small shake, it was more like a low rumble that seemed to echo through the very core of the planet. The walls of the cavern shuddered and dust fell from the ceiling. "What was that?" Jackson asked, his voice tight with tension. Jarla's eyes widened. "Something's coming. Someone else knows you're here, they can feel the power you've awakened." Before Jackson could respond, a low growl echoed through the cavern, followed by a hiss. Shadows moved in the distance, growing larger, more defined. Jarla turned to face the entrance, her posture stiffening. "They've found us," she whispered, "and now they'll stop at nothing to take what you've just claimed." Jackson's heart pounded in his chest. He hadn't asked for this, hadn't sought out the power that now flowed through his veins. But it was here, and he was no longer just an explorer. He was something more, something dangerous. As the shadows grew nearer, Jackson's mind cleared. He was no longer afraid. He was ready. The cavern trembled again, and this time the sound was unmistakable. A low growl that vibrated through the stone. It was as if the very bones of the planet were groaning under some immense weight. Jackson's heart raced in his chest as he turned to Jarla, who had already tensed, her eyes scanning the shadows in the distance. "They're here," she whispered, her voice tight with concern. Jackson could feel the change in the air. The power that had been flowing through him was no longer just a faint whisper in the back of his mind. It had become a roaring tide, filling him with an energy he couldn't quite control. His senses had sharpened to an unnerving degree. He could hear every footstep, every shift of the earth, and the faintest rustle of something moving in the darkness. "What are they?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jarla's eyes never left the shadows. "Enemies, rival factions. They've been hunting for the bloodline's power for centuries, and now they've found it. And you—" Jackson's grip tightened around the ancient relics he had been carrying, the ones he had come to Zurath to recover. But now they felt insignificant in his hands. The power inside him had eclipsed everything else. He was no longer just a human explorer, no longer just a man who had stumbled upon something extraordinary. He was a part of it now, a part of something that had been hidden away for centuries. And these enemies, whoever they were, had been waiting for this moment. The sound of movement grew louder, and then, suddenly, figures emerged from the darkness. They were tall, humanoid, but unlike any humans Jackson had ever encountered. Their skin was ashen gray, and their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, like they had been infused with the same energy that now surged through Jackson's own veins. They were dressed in dark, tattered robes, their faces obscured by hoods. Jarla stepped forward, her expression resolute. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice cold but commanding. The leader of the group, a tall figure with a twisted, scarred face, stepped forward, his voice a low rasp. "We didn't have a choice, Princess. The bloodline's power was always meant to belong to us, and now it's ours." Jackson's pulse quickened. He felt a wave of heat wash over him, a surge of anger that wasn't entirely his own. The bloodline's power, it seemed, had a mind of its own. It responded to his emotions, to the rising tension in the air. He could feel the energy growing stronger, surging through his body, and for the first time he understood what Jarla had meant. The bloodline wasn't just a gift, it was a weapon. He stepped forward, his mind clearer than it had ever been. The figures before him, these enemies, might have been stronger in numbers, but they didn't have what he had now. The power inside him was ancient, untapped, and ready to be unleashed. The leader of the group let out a low chuckle. "You think you can stand against us, human? You're nothing more than a vessel." But Jackson wasn't listening. He could feel the bloodline's power thrumming beneath his skin, urging him forward, urging him to act. With a swift movement, he lifted his hand, and without thinking he extended his palm toward the group. A blast of energy shot out from his hand, striking the leader square in the chest. The force of it was enough to send him stumbling backward, crashing into one of his own. The air crackled with the raw power, and Jackson felt a thrill run through him. It was like waking up from a deep sleep. He had been given a weapon, and now he knew how to use it. The other figures recoiled, fear flashing in their glowing eyes. The leader, struggling to regain his footing, spat on the ground. "You fool, you don't know what you've just done." Jackson stepped forward, his eyes locked on the group. "I think I understand perfectly." The leader raised his hand, and a dark energy surged from his fingers, a wave of black tendrils that shot toward Jackson. But before they could make contact, a shield of light erupted from Jackson's body, pushing the tendrils back. He felt the power inside him, the bloodline's power wrapping around him like a second skin, protecting him, strengthening him. "Enough!" Jarla's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. She stepped between Jackson and the group, her posture unwavering. "You've come too far, and now you'll pay the price." The leader sneered, his lips curling into a twisted grin. "You think you can stop us, Princess? Your bloodline is nothing more than a forgotten relic. We're the future." Jarla's gaze hardened. "You're mistaken. My bloodline is the key to this world's survival, and you will not take it from me." Jackson could feel the tension between them, the ancient history that hung heavy in the air. This was more than a simple fight. This was a war, a battle for something far greater than either side had realized. And now, Jackson was right in the middle of it. As the battle began to escalate, Jackson found himself stepping forward once again, the bloodline's power thrumming inside him, urging him to act. He raised his hands, and this time he didn't hold back. He let the energy flow freely, allowing the power inside him to erupt in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave sent the enemies flying backward, their bodies crashing into the walls of the cavern. Jackson felt a rush of exhilaration, but beneath it there was something darker. The bloodline's power wasn't just about strength, it was about control. And right now, Jackson wasn't sure he had it. Jarla, watching the scene unfold, narrowed her eyes. "You're doing well," she said, her voice almost approving. "But be careful. The bloodline will take more from you than you realize. It feeds on your emotions, on your anger. If you let it, it will consume you." Jackson nodded, though he wasn't sure if he could stop. The power felt too good, too real. He was addicted to it already, and that scared him more than anything else. The leader of the enemy group was struggling to rise, his face twisted in rage. "This isn't over, human," he growled. "You've only awakened the beginning of what's to come. The bloodline's power is mine, and I'll take it." Jackson's eyes flashed with determination. "You'll never have it." With a final, explosive burst of energy, Jackson sent the enemy group scattering. Their leader tried to stand, but he was too weak now, too defeated. Jackson had done what he came here to do. The power inside him had been unleashed, and the enemies had been stopped, for now. But the battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. Jarla stepped up beside him, her face unreadable. "You've done well, Jackson, but this is just the beginning. There are more out there who will come for you for the power you now possess." Jackson looked at her, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "I'm ready." Jarla gave him a sharp, calculating look. "I hope so, because you're not just fighting for yourself anymore, you're fighting for everything." Jackson nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He wasn't just a human anymore. He wasn't just an explorer. He was something else. Something much more powerful. And now he had no choice but to embrace it.